Peace. Welcome to the culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation. Folks, we got so many great conversations for you. The first one, let's talk about the lack of Black representation and what the situation down in Tennessee showed about Black folks in the South. But more importantly, we have a huge update about the Tennessee Three, talking about Mr. Justin Pearson. We're going to give you the latest in that story. Also, let's talk about the Dalai Lama had asking a little boy to suck his tongue. The Dalai Lama, the Buddhist priest, had now officially put out a statement saying he apologized for the request, but many people are still disturbed that he even made it in the first place. We'll share with you a little bit about that. And then later on, has America as a country, have we allowed our individualism to succeed the common good? This is the great concern that some social scientists and others are having about the state of the country. And I want to have that conversation with you. So stay with us. All of that and a whole lot more. I got something for you for Trends, Posts, and Doing the Most. So stay with me. You're tuned into the culture right here on the Black Star Network. Let's go. All right, folks, welcome to the culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation as we're streaming live on blackstarnetwork.com and, of course, Amazon News. Make sure y'all get ready to join us in the discussion as we're also streaming on YouTube and Facebook. And crew, I would love to hear from you as we have some of these big conversations. All right, let's talk about Black representation and the lack of it. Especially in the southern part of the country. Folks, we're going to have a conversation about this in light of what has happened with the Tennessee Three, that story of those expelled Black lawmakers who were expelled because of their involvement in a gun control rally. Now, as we mentioned yesterday, Representative Justin Jones, he was reinstated and sent back to the State House by the Nashville Metro Council. Now, folks, the breaking news is that now, it looks like formerly Representative is now again Representative Justin Pearson of Memphis, Tennessee. He was reinstated by the Shelby County Commissioners. They had a 7-0 vote. So it was a unanimous decision to reinstate the Black lawmaker who has been very, very vocal about the situation. I'm going to bring my sister Suzette Speaks in before we jump into this conversation. Suzette, good to have you on as always. Good afternoon. How you feeling, Suzette?
Good afternoon. It's a rainy day in Miami, Florida, but we got some
rainy day?
Yes, but the news out of Tennessee has just put a smile on this damper day. So thank you for having me. Hey, everybody. What's up to the culture crew?
Hey, look, it's a little overcast here in Los Angeles as well. So I don't know what y'all doing over here, but y'all need to keep that over there. But look, let's talk about Mr. Justin Pearson, Representative Justin Pearson, being reinstated by the Shelby County Commissioners. Folks, we got to show you.
Yes.
What it's like. You got to give you all that good vibes and good energy today on a Wednesday to get you through the week. This is, we got some footage of the rally that's happening actually right now. And if you've been watching on Black Star Network, streaming on Roland Martin's, on the YouTube page for Brother Roland Martin, you know that they have a huge rally in celebration of this great decision. And so we want to bring you a little bit of what was said and more importantly, that energy. Here it is, Representative Justin Pearson checking in and showing what he really thinks of that decision. Take a look.
I believe it's a vision of the people who've been pushed to the periphery, coming to the well. I believe that it's a vision of the people who've been marginalized, coming to the well. I believe of the people who've been marginalized, coming to the well. I believe it is a vision of people who've been ostracized, coming to the well. See, I see white folk and black folk. I see queer folk and straight folk. I see rich folk and poor folk coming from the back to the well. Demanding justice right now. Not tomorrow, but right now. movement that's going to change this country. It's this movement in this moment in time that's going to change the country. And I'm so glad. Oh, I'm so glad. Yes, I'm glad. Oh, I'm glad. Yes, I'm glad. I'm so glad. Yeah. She's done it again. God's done it again. Oh, they lynched us on Thursday. Saturday was real quiet. Sunday was real silent. Monday was even quiet. Tuesday they thought they won. But Wednesday, right around 1:30, a couple thousand people showed up to declare God is still on the throne. God is still in control. I don't care what the Republicans do in Nashville, but in here, we thank God. We thank God. We thank God for making a way out of no way. We thank God for doing what they thought was impossible. We thank Him. 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 Oh, some folks don't know why I'm shouting. Some folks don't know why I'm shouting. 7 descendants of enslaved folk sent us back to Nashville. 7 descendants of folk called 3/5 of the people in this country reclaim democracy in it. That's what gets happened. So for anybody who doubts that God ain't never lied, that God that we walk with, that God voices that we shout with, for anybody who doubts the power, or the wonder-working power, the wonder-working power that tells you to run on, as my mama said, to see what the end's going to be. I just need a few folks who ready to run, who ready to run, who ready to run. And I can promise you, if you run, you won't grow weary in your well-doing. If you run, he'll knock you up. Like an eagle. And you are soaring back to Nashville. You are telling the people sent a message. We won't quit. We won't stop. Because this is what the Bible says.
Wow.
Man.
Wow. Suzette.
Boy, let the church say amen.
That man said, look, let me tell you.
What?
Let me tell you. We're going to have to add another moniker to that man. He's going to have to be Pastor Pearson.
Yes.
That man has to be Pastor Pearson.
Yes.
Man, look, if you ain't think he was black enough. Yeah, he was black.
I have two.
That brother got the ghost.
He hit like a whole different level. Yes, he did. Yes, he did. That man took us to church right now.
That brother got the ghost.
He's happy.
He took us to church.
Revelation.
I have never look in my years of seeing. I mean, I've seen people get excited about. I have never.
Sorry,
seen
my
that
feed is a little delayed. Go ahead, Farajii. Sorry for interrupting.
No, I'm sorry. You good. You good. Look, I've never seen a political leader respond like that about getting into office. This man wanted to be in office. He wanted to be a representative of the people. Oh my God. I have never seen that energy. That energy is enough for me to get through the week, man. I mean,
it is him being himself. That's true joy. So many times we don't get to see specifically Black men emote and be themselves and truly express the fullness of the range of emotions that they have. But clearly this has weighed on him. This is something that was unprecedented, is just kind of overused at this point. But just think about what they went through to be expelled from your seat and taken through this longer process now, and thankfully having the votes to get reinstated. It is a path that no one really thought probably that they would ever have to travel in 2023, but yet here he is. He's still standing, and he's able to get back to the body that he loves so much.
Hey, you know, our producer, our great producer Joel, said he is the worst nightmare of Tennessee. Yes. Those Tennessee redneck legislators, the worst nightmare. I mean, you can't get. I mean, man, oh man, this is the young Black man. Let me tell you something. Let me tell y'all something. And I think we kind of talked about this over the past couple of days, Suzette. But if you want to know if the Democratic Party is looking at this, brother, oh, trust and believe, the National Democratic Party, they might invite him. They just announced that the Democratic Convention will be in Chicago this year. Was it this year? Yeah, or next year. I think it's next year.
I think for next year, yeah.
Yeah, for next year. So it's going to be in Chicago. I can bet your bottom dollar
He's going to be on the microphone.
It's going to be on the microphone.
Yes, he is. They'd be foolish not to.
Oh
man.
The DNC said we got a superstar on the right. We got a superstar. Tennessee, that's small prize for this brother.
Yes. It's good to see that he's human.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, big shout out to Representative Justin Pearson, Representative Justin Jones, who both got their seats reinstated just after days of being expelled. The question is how is this going to move forward? How is this going to move the needle forward on Black representation, Suzette? And I think this is why we wanted to have this conversation, because I came across some information, some data that I thought was just mind-blowing, that if you did not know, Suzette and crew, 56% of Black people who live in this country live in the South. Now, this is according to the figures from the Pew Research Center. 56 of nearly a little bit more than half of Black people in this country live in those Confederate states, those 13 states. These are states that have some of the most ass backwards policies that impact Black people in this country. So I want to share with folks on this, and then we're going to have to, I know we're going to have to take a quick pause. Let me do this. Let's take a quick pause because before we get into this data. And Suzette, when we come back, I want to get your take on this as we're talking about the lack of Black representation in light of this big decision coming out of Shelby County down in Memphis, saying that Representative Justin Pearson has officially been reinstated to his seat back in the Texas House, the Tennessee House. But folks, that's one small victory compared to the bigger picture of lack of Black representation. I'm gonna share with you the data. We're gonna have the conversation. So stay with us. We got a lot to discuss here on The Culture, right here on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about Blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
Pull up a chair. Take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show, Get Wealthy, focuses on the things that your financial advisor and bank isn't telling you, but you absolutely need to know. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
An angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol.
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate Black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. We have been talking about the lack of Black representation. Of course, we started with the big news coming out of Memphis, Tennessee, where Shelby County commissioners did a vote, a 7-0 vote to reinstate Representative Justin Pearson, putting him back into the seat that he lost just a few days ago, putting him back into the seat of the Tennessee House. Now, big victory for the people of Memphis, big victory for the state of Tennessee. However, that is just a small victory compared to the larger issue of the lack of Black representation. And folks, I shared with you before the pause that there are 56% of Black people who live in this country live in the South. This is based on Pew Research and the census. 56%, folks, live in the South. Let me just share this with you, then I'm going to bring my sister Suzette back into the conversation. This is coming out of the conversation, the piece around from Pew. It says that Black Americans are underrepresented. Folks, take a look at this. Black Americans are underrepresented in every one of the 13 states that made up the Confederacy. And in many states, with the highest percentages of Black residents, the gaps between those percentages and the percentage of Blacks in the state legislature is the largest. Wow. So we're seeing that there are a number of Black folks that are in these states, but yet they still, our people, and I'm sure many of you are probably checking in from those 13 Confederate states, you're not seeing the proper representation of you and your interests in those states. All right, let me just share this with you, then I'm going to get Suzette. All right, let me go to check this out. Here's the breakdown of those states. Keena, let's put that second quote up. Here it is, folks. I want to take a look at this. Black Americans accounted for 17% of Tennessee's population in 2022, but just under 11% of the state's 132 legislators were Black. Wow. Georgia, birthplace of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., 33% of the state's population was Black. Only 22% of the state legislators were Black. Wow. It's almost exactly the same in Louisiana, where Black Americans accounted for 33% of the state population by only 22.9% of the state legislature. Mississippi has the largest percentage of Black residents in the region, 38%, but only 27.6% of the Magnolia State's legislature was Black. Black residents accounted for 20% of Virginia's population, but only 11.4% of the state legislature. And in North Carolina, Black residents were 22.3% of the population, but only 15.3% of the legislature there. Blacks are underrepresented in state government in other parts of the country, but the problem is most pronounced, most pernicious in the part of the country where most Black people have decided to live. And this comes out of the Root and Pew Research Center and the 2022 and the 2020 census. Take a look at all of this. All right, I want to bring Suzette back. Suzette, this is something. We are living in states where we hardly are represented. We are living in states, Suzette, where our interests aren't really being met. And this is interesting. I don't know what to make of this. What's your take on it?
Well, I think there are historical factors that are now really showing the ugly truth as to what has been going on when it comes to the representative democracy that we have here in the United States. Unfortunately, I don't think we have much reprieve at this time, but to kind of give us some cultural and historical context, we can take this discussion back to as early as 1812. I was looking at when the first congressional district was drawn to favor one party versus another party. And we know this term as gerrymandering. And I was looking back at the history as to where it started. It started actually in Boston, where the governor at the time named Elbridge Gerry created or approved a district that looked like a salamander, where parts of the city of Boston were cut up so indistinctly that it looked actually like a lizard. So we got this name given to him by the Boston Globe at the time in 1812 called gerrymandering. Now, this has become very pervasive across the country. Not only do we have a constitutional mandate to redraw districts based on population, it says it in the U.S. Constitution, every 10 years when the census is taken, wherever populations move, we have to redraw districts. But what has been happening is whoever is in control of the state legislatures, right, state by state, whoever is in control of the state house and the state senate, usually, and the governorship, usually says who will be able to draw these maps. And these maps have gotten worse and worse when it comes to fairness, because what is happening is that instead of voters picking their representatives, the representatives are picking which voters they want. So you see these districts, if you look at even where you live, our culture crew, and you can see what your district looked like in the year 2001, in the year 2011 versus 2021. They're always being redrawn, and many of us are finding ourselves in districts that are called packed. It's called packing, putting all of a social group, ethnic group, social class in one district so you get one seat, or they call it cracking, which is splitting up a highly concentrated district into many so that their vote is diluted. They don't really have influence in the district they're now in. So when we see this packing and we see this cracking, we've seen cases as late as 2018 being brought to the Supreme Court of the United States, but they have not. They basically said this is not a federal issue and have remanded it or put it back down to the state courts for them to decide. So it has become really out of control when I have large swaths of our population, particularly among African Americans, as you stated, where we have these large numbers. I live in Florida, right?
Right.
But we have districts that are favoring a party that might actually be, the minority of voters in a district, in a state. So this has gotten out of control, especially at the state level.
I'm glad that you brought that up, and I think you're bringing this, and I'm so happy to have this conversation with you, Suzette, because you understand from both the legal and the political side of things. But what about the state of Florida? We didn't share those numbers about Florida, but those areas, a lot of people would assume that certain counties or cities in Florida like Miami or Daytona or Orlando, like what's the large concentration of Black folks, and are those Black folks in those areas of Florida, are they in the same boat as some of these other cities and other states?
Absolutely. We've looked at in Florida over the last 20 years, we have not had a statewide elected Democrat except for one, a colleague of mine, Nikki Free, back in 2016, be elected. So every time a map has been redrawn, you've seen predominantly Black neighborhoods and communities packed into very highly concentrated districts. So we've had people sue, and of course, like I said, the U.S. Supreme Court are not taking up cases like this. As of 2018, they say the legal term is injusticiable, right? There's no legal framework for the Supremes to say what is fair, even though you have majority Republicans or 60% Democrats and 40% Republicans. But how come you always get elected 70% to 30%? Something is wrong. You've created a district specifically for this person or for that party. So Florida is also highly gerrymandered. When I look at even the state Senate, I think there may be out of a body of 40, maybe 13 Democrats. And for the longest time over the last 20 years, we've had more registered Democrats in the state of Florida than Republicans. It's just recently that number has switched over to Republicans now having the majority. But with the majority of voters being registered Democrat, we could not see in the state of Florida that influence via the districts that were drawn. So yes, just like the states that you brought up here and the numbers that we're looking at today, Florida is definitely representative of this trend that has been putting us in terms of minority groups kind of in a marginalized position where we don't have the representation that we should have in our state bodies and even in the congressional districts.
Absolutely. We're going to take a couple of comments from the crew. Then we're going to take a quick pause. Shalenda, you checked in and said, our voice is our vote. It absolutely, positively, unequivocally makes a difference. And anyone who tells you differently do not have our best interests. There it is right there. And I agree. Yeah, but I also know, as we talked to my brother Michael and Hotep yesterday, voting is not just an exercise, a thing that we use to exercise, but voting is to gain power. And we can't forget about that part. But I am so happy, Shalenda, that you brought that up. Janelle, you checked in and said, in North Carolina, with the new conservative state Supreme Court and GOP supermajority, they are about to gerrymander the map with surgical precision again. Wow. So we're going to see that happening. And I don't doubt that at all, Janelle, that's not happening in North Carolina. I appreciate you. Chris, you said something, I think, Chris Big, you checked in, and I thought this was pretty interesting. So run as a Republican and use creative wording to achieve your goals.
Chris. I don't know if that's the answer.
That strategy has been used so many times, and then it brought us nothing.
I would
that
offer.
Strategy has been used. Like we always say, oh, let's just go to the other side, and then try to. In Baltimore City, there was a sister that was running for mayor. She ran under the Republican ticket. A Black woman who I know, right? I mean, she's all well. She actually ran under the Republican ticket in a Democratic city like Baltimore. We've seen that. Why? Suzette, what's your take?
I would advise probably that maybe getting involved within the party structure might have more of an impact than necessarily changing party. That means there are usually every county, if Florida is divided in counties, if you have different cities, parishes, where there are local Democratic parties, getting involved from the ground level so that you influence who is going to help to move the agenda forward and what actually the agenda is, I think is more important. Actually donating to candidates. One thing I know is we can't get elected if we don't have the funds to compete.
There you go.
Opening a checkbook is more important, not to say more important than switching a party, but is a different way of actually influencing the outcome. Write someone who you believe in a $25 check, a $50 check, $100 if you can, or more, so that they can actually have an ability to compete with someone who is probably going to be well-funded, because that's one thing I think our Republican counterparts really understand. Money talks.
And money talks. And Chris went on to say, we got to take a pause, but Chris said, instead of trying to force the state into Democrats' hands, LOL, run as Republican and change the face of the Republican Party. I don't want us to be the face of the Republican. Have you seen the Republican Party? I mean, seriously, like, do we want to, look, do we want to be window dressers for a party that is against our very interests? That's all. We would be mannequins. We would look like Tim Scott.
Well, I will say,
well, what's the point?
All Republicans are not the same.
I would rather for us not get involved in any political situation with the two major parties than stand as a mannequin for the Republican Party. What, are we serious? Come on, bro. Come on. That's not the move right now. That's not where we at right now, Chris. I hear you. I trust it, and trust me, I respect your views, but trust and believe, I don't think that's the move right now. I don't want to be. We just should not want to be mannequins for somebody else's agenda at this point. No more mannequins. No more mannequins. All right, Suzette, we're going to have to take a quick pause, and we'll come back and get your thoughts on this. More crew members are checking in. Folks, stay with us. We got a lot to cover. We'll also talk about this very disturbing story around the Dalai Lama, what the Buddhist leader said about his request to have a little boy to suck his tongue. We'll share with you the story. Stay with us. A lot more in the first hour of The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it.
This is about covering us.
Invest in black-owned media.
Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks.
We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible.
Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
All right, folks, thank you so much for tuning back into The Culture here on the Black Star Network. We've been talking about the lack of black representation. The numbers are staggering when you look at the number of black people who live in those 13 states, the Confederate states, and the numbers of the representatives of our people, or the lack thereof, the lack of numbers. When you look at the data, and you see you got a large number of black folks in these southern states, but you have a very small number of black representatives in these state legislatures. And of course, we've been talking about the implications of all of this with my sister Suzette Speaks of the Suzette Speaks show on YouTube. Suzette, you're in Florida, you're seeing, and I'm going back to this piece about what Chris is bringing up, talking about this whole strategy of being a part of the party of the Republican Party. And this is, look, I get it. The Democrats ain't perfect either. I'm not saying that. But I'm not trying to align myself. I'm not trying to align myself. I'm talking about, again, going back to character and values, Suzette. I cannot, in good conscience, align myself with a group of people who can't even, when the truth is being presented to them, won't even recognize the truth. And then think that they have my interest as a candidate at heart. How does that happen? How do you put yourself in a position to be a tool? And some people might say, oh, you're just doing the same thing for Democrats. I don't see it the exact same way. I don't see it. I think the Republican Party is very off base in a lot of different ways. Now, are the Democrats perfect? Hell no, they're not perfect. I would rather for us to be in an independent space, right? But we do. That's going to take time to build. That's going to take some consensus from our people. But I'm not just jumping ship and just be like, let's be a part of the Republican Party so we can win a state. Because everything, all the BS that comes with the party is going to be plopped at your doorstep. It's like being in a relationship with somebody who has a vivid past.
The Republican
if
Party
you see walking with them, you're going to have to carry that baggage that they bring as well. So
yeah, I was just going to add, the Republican Party is in a battle for its soul right now. The Republican Party of 25 years ago, 30 years ago, that was talking about so-called rugged individualism and pull yourself up by your bootstraps and economic conservatism and these type of things has really shifted. And we've seen that from the 2016 election, 2020 election. It has been co-opted by what some would have called the fringes 10 years ago, but now have found themselves at the center. So until you are clear on, the values and the policy positions that would actually serve Black people that are in today's Republican Party, or even you would say like the loudest voices in today's Republican Party, I think we would do ourselves a kind of disservice, because again, there are people, and I'll say that they are kind of not monolithic as well in terms of Republicans who are speaking up against what some would call Trumpism and some would call blatant racism. So we got to be very careful when we say we're going to hitch ourselves to a different wagon, when that wagon, oftentimes, depending on state by state, the various leaders that are local versus the very loud national voices, you got to be very careful that you find interests that actually serve you and serve your community.
Right. Chris said, me and Chris going back and forth right now, Suzette. We all going back and forth. Chris said, Farajii, your statement about not participating at all rather than be a Republican is exactly why gerrymandering has worked so well and Black folks have no power in Mississippi, in Georgia, etc.
Well, I think the Republicans have found a formula that works, right? There has been this attempt at minority control via legal mechanisms like creating your own maps. If they control the maps, they are making more seats that are going to make sure they put more Republicans in, that are going to make sure they are in charge of making future maps. So I don't know how we break this cycle, except that we do have to vote, that we do have to get involved in the process. Like I said, the Supremes have left it up to the local bodies, the district courts, state courts to figure this out. So Florida Supreme Court and others would have to approve any type of lawsuit that comes forward or say that the map is actually illegal and is discriminatory. That's one thing blatantly that the courts have laid out. You should not be completely based on race, marginalizing a group of voters. But again, it can be sticky on how you prove that's what you're doing or what you're not doing. But to say that we need to just remove ourselves completely, I think is the wrong approach.
I mean, that's fine. And then what I'm saying, hey, look, Suzette, if the choice is between Democrats and Republicans, and my values are more aligned with the Democrats than with the Republicans, right? But the other thing is that, and Chris, this is for you too, bro. Like, if we're not even having a conversation, we're talking about going back and forth between parties. Mm-hmm. We're not even really having a deeper conversation about independent, representation, or, trying to create some independent structure. I know people say, oh man, you keep talking about this third party is never going to happen. That is what's stopping Black folks from not getting power, not having the vision to see outside of the current confines of this political system. It's not about because somebody don't want to join the party, so therefore we don't have no power. No, we don't have the same type of political power because of fear. We don't have the same type of political power because we have no vision to truly believe, just like white people have done in this country and other people have done, that they've organized, united, and said, look, if you don't give us these things based on our interests, then we're not going to participate. It's not about, I'm going to jump to this party so I can get a little power here and then jump back to this party. At some point, something has to be done. How much of our people have already given in Mississippi? We voted for Democrats. We voted for Republicans. And if you look at the data, if you look at the history, you'll see that we're getting a little bit more further along with the Democrats than we are with the Republicans in this current system of things, right? A little bit more. But are we thinking truly out of the box? No. I don't want us to keep going back and forth about which party, and then we're not even acknowledging the fact that maybe Black folks don't have power in Mississippi and Georgia is because Black folks don't care about the system. We don't care about the system because the system has constantly failed us time and time again when we had active participation in the system. So what do you see? Do you blame the people or do you blame the poor leadership that stand before the people? We can't get into no conversation as if Black folks don't vote. That's a lie. Or that we don't take part in the election, or we're not educated about the issue. That's all a lie. That's not it. We're seeing poor leadership. And as a result of poor leadership, people are not voting. As a result of parties not being to adhere to the truth, or parties not for making sure that there's justice among its poor and marginalized groups of people that support these parties, they're not voting. That's what it is. So you want to keep beating up on the voters? Or when you want to beat up on the poor leadership that stands before us, they keep talking, but not actually manifesting, not expressing, not exhibiting what they say that they believe and what they're all about. I'm not beating up on no more folks. I'm looking at the poor leadership, Suzette.
Listen, there are people that will agree with you wholeheartedly, Farajii. I look at it as an uphill battle. For example, some of my colleagues who were in Tallahassee fighting as Democrats right now in our state House of Representatives, their vote is not going to count the way it should because there is a super majority of Republicans. What does that mean? They don't need one Democrat to vote their way to pass anything. That's why we're seeing this constant barrage of new legislation to, augment Don't Say Gay, to augment. We just had 2 back-to-back shootings, and our governor quietly signed the permitless carry bill to now have no training necessary, no licensure necessary to carry weapons in the state of Florida, right, making our lives, again, putting us in danger even more. But no matter what my friends and colleagues are doing in the Senate and the House, they can only create a record. They can only voice opposition and cast a vote. But they're never going to have a majority if these districts remain drawn as they are, which again begets the Republicans having the same power for decades to come. So I think we have to look for another solution when it comes to either the Supreme Courts of the states, how we are bringing lawsuits and on what grounds, perhaps. But I don't know exactly what the pervasive solution will be, except to draw more fair districts. And I don't know how we get our Republican brethren to do that if there's no incentive or disincentive to doing it. They're remaining, again, look at Tennessee. They control the Nashville airport. The state house does. When you look at the other big, I think they have like an arena, performance arena, I forget the name of it, that controls what shows come to Nashville, is now under the auspices of the state legislature. They've cut the city council down from 40 members, which would have been more Black membership, now down to 20. So once you have all this power kind of concentrated within a ruling party, it's very difficult to change it back into the hands or to correct the representation, so it is more representative of who lives in what districts and in what states and in what numbers. There are those, just to play devil's advocate, that will say, well, if urban areas are more concentrated, they will only allow for certain influence of as many districts, meaning you are all living together in one concentrated area, so it would make sense to put everybody in one district. That is the counter argument. Of course, I don't buy that, and I know there's a lot of holes in that, but that's what you will hear. Well, you live in urban centers. Well, if the population is much higher, though, in those urban centers, there's still a will among the majority of voters to be, positioned a certain way in terms of policy, for policy to go a certain way. But we're going to see this fight. It's going to be around for quite some time, Farajii, because this is happening across the board, and it has worked.
Absolutely has worked a lot. All right, folks, we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, let's shift gears. Let's talk about the Dalai Lama, the Buddhist leader who is under fire and great controversy for asking a little boy to suck his tongue while he was greeting him. The Dalai Lama has officially put out a statement to apologize, but has opened the door around the conversation about child abuse and sexual abuse. Folks, stay with us. That discussion is up next here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punches! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Hey, Black, I love y'all. All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Pull up a chair. Take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
We're all impacted by the culture, whether we know it or not. From politics to music and entertainment, it's a huge part of our lives, and we're going to talk about it every day right here on The Culture with me, Farajii Muhammad, only on the Black Star Network.
I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show, Get Wealthy, focuses on the things that your financial advisor and bank isn't telling you, but you absolutely need to know. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
All right, folks, welcome back to the culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Thank you for tuning in this afternoon. The next big conversation that people have certainly been talking about, but even though it has garnered people to share their thoughts, is very, very interesting how this discussion has been going. And I'm speaking of the discussion around the Dalai Lama. Over the weekend, the Dalai Lama had an opportunity to meet and greet some of his followers, and he greeted a little boy. And during that brief interaction, the Dalai Lama kissed the young boy on the lips and asked him to suck his tongue. Now, the incident was videotaped, and it sparked outrage, certainly on social media. The 87-year-old Buddhist priest regrets the incident and wishes to apologize to the boy and his family. Let me just share with you what the Dalai Lama and his office put out as part of the statement here, folks, and take a look. Here's what the Dalai Lama had to say about this. He said, a video clip has been circulating that shows a recent meeting when a young boy asks His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, if he can give him a hug. His Holiness wishes to apologize to the boy and his family, as well as his many friends across the world, for the hurt his words may have caused. His Holiness often teases people he meets in an innocent and playful way, even in public and before cameras. He regrets the incident. Now, if you were to take there is, according to some of the history of Tibetan leaders, there is a history that shows that that sometimes Buddhist leaders will ask for, and I'm pulling it up right now. In Tibet, there is sticking out one's tongue is known as a traditional greeting. This is part of the history of the Tibetan people. That sticking out one's tongue is known as a traditional greeting stemming from a 9th century myth about an unpopular king with a black tongue. When the king died, Tibetans began revealing their tongues to show they hadn't become his incarnate. However, tongue sucking does not appear to be a part of the tradition of this Tibetan history. I want to bring my sister Suzette Speaks back into the frame. And Suzette, let's talk about this, because this right here struck a nerve for a lot of people around the world, especially here in America. And in a moment, I'm going to share with you what hip hop superstar Cardi B had to say about the incident. But I know His Holiness put out this message, but it is a very strange request.
Yeah. So again, this is such a sensitive topic for anyone who cares for children or who loves children, who wants to protect children. This definitely struck a nerve in pop culture. Now, the Dalai Lama is the head of the Tibetan Tibetan House of Buddhism, if you want to call it, subset of Buddhists. When I looked up how many Buddhists are on this earth right now, in 2010, we have about 488 million Buddhists that exist across the globe. This is a religion that originated in Asia and the Indian subcontinent. And again, Tibet has had this very tumultuous relationship with its neighbor, with China in specific. So the spiritual leader of the Dalai Lama is super important in terms of being this kind of transcendent figure, not only for Tibet, but for the world at large. So up until this moment, we had seen a certain respect that was given this gentleman who is now 84 years old, and he's now the 14th incarnate of the Dalai Lama. But this incident was in fact shocking to us, particularly to Western culture. I was looking up, trying to find articles as to how it has been received, but even when I see people commenting from India, etc., they're offended. They are more than offended. They are actually shocked that this highly respected, reverenced man of God, if you will, would have made such an off-color, off-putting joke. As you said, this young child came up to him, asked him if he could hug him. And initially what seemed to be a quite innocent exchange, where the young boy first hugged him and then he asked for a kiss on the cheek. The Dalai Lama kind of gave him his cheek. We thought it was done. He asked for a kiss on the lips, took the boy by the chin and brought him close for a lip-to-lip, mouth-to-mouth kiss, and didn't stop there. There was a pause. If you watch the video, it's on Twitter, etc., where he stops and is almost thinking. The crowd is chuckling at that point. It seems to be playful. And then he asks, quote unquote, for him to suck his tongue. And he proceeds to stick out his tongue. The little boy draws close. It's so uncomfortable. It's cringy.
Oh my God.
And then he goes head to head, and the little boy rests his head on his head, and there's no intimacy there. But it was just so inappropriate. And it seemed like it was almost kind of second nature-ish. So that if this was something that was commonly done, as they say, in the dark, it didn't seem like a problem. in the light. And so many of us who are, again, highly sensitive, and those who just believe in right and wrong and protecting children, took great offense to what they saw on that video.
Look, I got to take another pause. When we come forward, we're going to continue the conversation. Crew, what do you make of this? Some of you have already checked in and saying the apology from the Buddhist leader is not enough. But there is, I will share with you some of the remarks that Cardi B said about the whole situation. And to Suzette's point, that this needs to be discussed. This needs to be discussed. So we will do our best to cover this and continue to have a civilized conversation about this. Stay with us, folks. You're tuned into The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol,
we're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear. Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Folks, welcome back to the show. We've been talking about the Dalai Lama and his very disturbing request to have a little boy suck his tongue during a brief interaction. This is the request. There's the Dalai Lama right there. The 87-year-old Buddhist leader has since apologized for the request and for the uncomfortable moment that happened as a result of this brief interaction with the boy. He put out a statement saying that he apologizes to the boy's family and to his friends around the world. But it has caused people to once again have a larger conversation about faith leaders and children. Now, big shout out to my sister, Nicole. Nicole, you said that April is National Child Abuse Prevention Month. So we're having the conversation about child abuse and, more important, sexual abuse and children. But it's hard for me, Suzette, to believe that in 2023, where we're seeing a reckoning of the Catholic Church. I had just a couple of days ago in my hometown, my home state of Maryland, they put out a scathing report about the Catholic Church and its litany of abuses in Maryland, hundreds of cases that they have found, nearly 1,000 cases. Hundreds of cases as a result of the abuse. And it's hard for me to believe that in 2023, that any faith leader representing any faith institution would not have the presence of mind to know the boundaries, especially when it comes to children, but would not have the presence of mind to keep the presence of mind to say, you know what? To filter, to check yourself You know what I'm saying? And more importantly, making sure that this is not acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
This is the thing. Like we're seeing a situation. I mean, this is the Dalai Lama. Some folks have said he would have gotten his ass beaten. And I mean, and then you can't fall back and just say, well, you know, he was just playing around. It's too much of this. It's too much abuse of our babies, man. And I want to let's throw up what Cardi B had to say on this, folks. And I know Cardi B, y'all probably is like, well, what? Why does she have to? But I agree with Cardi. I agree with Cardi. Hey, King, let's post her thoughts on this, bro. Cardi B, she came out. She said, this world is full of predators. She wrote this on Twitter on Monday of this week. They prey on the innocent, the ones who are most unknowing, our children. Predators could be our neighbors, our school teachers, even people with money, power, and our churches. She warned parents to, quote, constantly talk with your kids about boundaries and what they shouldn't allow people to do to them. Facts. Facts. Predators can be anybody. Predators can be people with a lot of money. They can be people with prestige and fame. They can be people in high-profile positions. They don't have to be poor and broke and destitute. Predators can be anybody. They can be in the schools. They can be in the church. They can be in, unfortunately, any faith institution now. Predators.
Yeah.
And people got mad at Cardi for classifying the Dalai Lama, but it's hard. I mean, can you really get upset for a request like that? So you mean to tell me that's a normal thing? That a grown man would ask of a child? If he wasn't the Dalai Lama and he was just, you know,
Joe yeah. Mm-hmm.
But should we not have a conversation about predatory behavior in children? And then we wonder why the children are imbalanced, Suzette, when it comes to their from everything from their sense of self, their sexuality, everything. We wonder, well, how did they get this way? What happened? But if we continue to kind of act as if the culture of child abuse doesn't exist, what do you expect?
What you're saying is, I completely agree with Farajii, and shout out to Cardi B. I thought she was really, really brave for coming out and sharing her.
Very brave, yeah.
She received a lot of backlash, and people are saying it's the right message from the wrong messenger, and are bringing up her past as a stripper, or that, you know, she has shared in prior documentaries and interviews that she allegedly, you know, would drug men or take their money and all this other stuff. So they calling her a predator. And I thought to myself, wow, what a world we're in, where a person of her influence, quite frankly, is being ridiculed for speaking up out against, you know.
But it's not the same thing, though.
Yeah, she has said that. She was like, you guys are whack, you guys are crazy for me making this statement and saying that I can't or I shouldn't be the person. I'm a mom. She came back really hard. A lot of, you know, strong language she used. But how dare you tell me when I'm thinking about my children and the children of the world that are made victims every single day. And she even mentions in her response to some of this that, you know, there's something similar. She didn't go into detail, happened to her as a young person, and she didn't, you know, care to elaborate in these tweets, but she, you know, made the statement like, what kind of world are we living in where I have something very strongly to say and condemn, you know, this evil, this type of act, and then you guys are coming for me. Nonetheless, to refocus on what he actually did. This is, I think, very triggering for many of us who thought we could trust in our religious institutions. Here yet again, it's almost like we had this happen already. This is almost like a record player effect when it comes to, you know, people unfortunately hiding in positions of authority in religious organizations, so that, not saying the Dalai Lama is, but so that they can perpetrate these heinous acts on children. So there were questions raised. There are going to be more questions raised. I don't know that sorry note that my statement of regret, I'm sorry who I offended, that kind of thing. The Boyce family has not said anything as of yet,
Right.
but it is really critical that I still think we keep this in the fore, because it shouldn't be, hush hush. We've had a reckoning in churches in the United States, churches overseas in Europe. We've seen a reckoning in Hollywood and other places where, again, people who got away with a lot of really, disgusting behavior have been held to account. And I think, you shouldn't be exempt because you're sitting in a position of high power, as Cardi has pointed out. Oftentimes, those are the most heinous perpetrators because they have the most power and the money and the influence to cover it up or to pressure people and get people to not say a darn thing. And I think that also speaks to our culture of having accountability around them. Not only are they responsible, but for me, the people in their circles, the leadership around them who sees foolishness or suspects foolishness, if they do, need to speak up and not be afraid. Again, there's a lot of influence that they have, so people sometimes acquiesce, but we need to empower folks who are within these organizations as well to speak out, and we need to do more to protect our children across the board.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, absolutely. Sandy, you checked in, my sister Sandy W. You said we don't protect kids from gun violence and sexual violence or exploitation in this country. And unfortunately, those things are predicated on adults making money. Yeah, we don't protect them. We really don't. I mean, we grow up, we want our children, especially, and I'm saying the culture in Black community. We can't talk about no one else because I'm not a part of that community. But I know for Black folks, we have adult grooming ways for children. We want children, like children can be children up to the age of 4 in the Black community. Then after that, boom, welcome to adulthood. We expose them to too much, too fast, too early. You see what I'm saying? And it's like now we wonder why they act a certain way. You know what I mean? And I mean, this is now, and look, this is not by any way saying, oh, what the Dalai Lama, because I think the Dalai Lama is dead ass wrong on this. Dead ass wrong. But to Sandy's point, we do have to look at the culture and the circumstances and the conditions that we raise our children in and the households and the things that we expose them to. It's too much, man. It's too much. We keep talking about the future from political parties. The real future is sitting right at home. The real future is the babies, man.
Yeah. And what are they?
So if we mess them up, and look, this of course gets near and dear to me. I got a son and a daughter. You know what I mean? I remember being in a store and this older white male, and trust me, my daughter, very cute and bop and all that. He bent down. Oh my gosh, she cute. I ran so quick over there. Yeah, thank you. Took her and grabbed her. I don't even like. You know
not
what I'm
wrong
saying?
to do that, brother. Not wrong to do that. My goodness.
I'm serious. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes, and I'm sure, crew, y'all have children. Your children attract people, the way they look, the way you dress them. And we all been in those situations. You can walk up to a baby and you want to do all of this. No. There's boundaries for that. You can't. I don't do that. I don't care if the baby waves at you, smiles at you. The baby is not consenting for you to approach them. Definitely not consenting for you to touch them without you getting that okay from the parent or whoever the caretaker is. But we don't have those boundaries no more. Remember what I'm saying, Suzanne? I mean, just
100%. Yeah, there is the power dynamic in this case also, where there's a person of immense power and this little child. And again, I think about all those folks who have been harmed in the service of God and how people use that power to exploit. They were predators before they got there, and then churches protected them. We have to stop doing that. We have to hold them to account. Even in the scenario you brought up, City of Baltimore, they didn't release names. They didn't release names of the perpetrators, to which many victims were very, very upset. They are, hiding in plain sight, quite frankly. And again, as a society, as you pointed out, we have to take a stand. We have to be able to say, this is not going to fly when it comes to the discussion about, early sexualization of our children, of our girls, especially with music, with dress, with style of dance, and other things that are kind of pushing on them a kind of adulthood that they are not quite ready for. And that it makes them responsible more so than the actual adult that is putting them in the position to, act in more adult-like ways than they should have to. We have to really be conscious of it, call it out, and intervene. Try to stop it. When you see there are people that are pushing boundaries on children, it again is almost like we have to watch out for our own. We have to watch out for our village so that we can stop some of the horror that is happening, especially when it comes to folks in power and in the context of our religious institutions as well.
Hey, Suzette, when you said that's the part that gets me. If this level of abuse is perpetrated by those who are in positions of power within religious institutions, right? Or they're supposed to represent God. Now, children if you teach your children about the concept of God, if you teach them about these things at an early age, right? I mean, imagine, and we're gonna have to take a quick pause, but imagine the what that does to a child's psyche, that you are supposed to be representative of God. God is good, then therefore, why are you doing something bad that makes me feel sad and bad and makes me feel uncomfortable myself? You're gonna attribute that to being the way God is.
Yeah.
And you're gonna wind up hating God because of the evilness and the madness within the quote unquote the representative. You see what I'm saying? And see, that's how deep that thing goes. Because you could turn a child away from their own faith because of your evilness. I don't know what to say to a child that's been abused by a religious leader, a priest, or I wouldn't know what to say. Can you really talk to them about God? If a priest has violated you, or if a Buddhist leader has violated, can you really say that there's a God? I mean, in their thinking, I'm just saying, in their thinking, they'd be like, what? Well, if God was so good, why he allowed something like this so bad to happen to me? If he loved me, see, that's how deep this thing goes. And see, I'm with some of the crew members. After one violation, this is how serious it is. After one violation, you got to go. You got to go.
Or at very least, investigated. Like, don't turn this other cheek and he was just playing. I'm like, he was just playing. This could have happened. Like, what are y'all talking about? Yeah, I've seen that.
You got to go because now you are an impediment for people to know who their creator is. Who you got to go.
Mm-hmm.
Now, is everybody perfect who stands before us in the name of God? Hell no.
Mm-hmm.
But is everybody an abuse of children who stand before? No.
So, certain lines you can't cross. Certain lines you can't cross. This is one of them.
Look, we got to take a quick pause. More conversation right here on The Culture. Stay with me, folks. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
We feel the hidden impacts of climate change that land harder in Black, Brown, and Native communities.
Not many people talk about it because they clearly don't know our lives. But with President Biden's landmark infrastructure and climate plans, our issues are finally seen.
Removing lead pipes means we know our water is safe. Cutting carbon pollution helps our kids breathe easier. 1.5 million new jobs means stable work in communities. The impact we need
right now.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it.
This is about covering us.
Invest in black-owned media.
Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks.
We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible.
Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. Let me bring my sister Suzette back into the frame. As we've been talking about this latest controversy around the Buddhist leader Dalai Lama and his request for a little boy to suck his tongue in a brief interaction, the Dalai Lama has since apologized since that incident happened just a few days ago, but it has garnered a lot of talk about sexual abuse, especially by faith leaders. And, Suzette, looking at where the crew stands on this situation, I think there's a vast majority of our online crew members who are like, this is unacceptable. This needs to be investigated, corrected. He needs to go. And I'm wondering, if the Buddhist temple is how serious they're going to take this situation, right? If they just say, okay, we put out this simple apology, and we're going to kind of move on, because you use the term reckoning. There should be a reckoning happen. And this is not just in the Buddhist temple, but in the church, in the mosque, in the synagogue, wherever it happens, there has to be some reckoning to show the world that there are still people in this world who do not see children as playthings. There has to be some reckoning, right? I mean, we started off this conversation, I think you made the point. A lot of us have been in positions where we have found ourselves in abusive situations when we were children. And that has yet to be fully addressed, resolved, you know what I mean? Some of us have certainly gone to therapy as a result of that. But it's so prevalent now. And this is the concern that I have around the culture, that when we see an extreme case like this is one thing, but there are still things that we see within our own communities. I'm getting back to this, Suzette, that it's in our own communities where we're saying, is this a level of abuse? I think we should start asking ourselves the same question. Is this considered abusive? One of my, Sharon Brooks checked in, she said that, she said, my daughter's father never allowed her to sit on any man's lap, period, regardless if relative or not. This is from Sharon Brooks. I was taught the same thing.
Same here. Could not. Don't be hugging.
I'm not letting my daughter sit on your lap, bro.
And also, I think this other thing where we make our children greet with a hug and kiss, I have learned that you have to let children read spirit too. Children have intuition too. So if I mean, I'm not a parent as of yet, but to look at the trend that some people are allowing their children to, greet with a handshake, greet with a wave, and instead of forcing a child to hug or kiss someone, I think that's something in our culture that we can also, bring to the fore as a possible option for how, we can start to change a culture where, our physical touch is a part of, American culture at large, but oftentimes we have to kind of read signs or listen to what children are doing, their body language as well, when it comes to just even greeting our loved ones.
And then if you do have a child that is very, friendly, that still don't give you you're still the parent. You're still the caretaker, right? So the child might be doing this. Oh, let me hug me.
Yeah.
But as the caretaker, as the parent, as the adult in the moment, you got to use the best of intelligence, the best judgment for that situation. Here's the other part about it too, Suzette. We've often used to have this conversation in the space of girls, the boys.
I was about to say it can go both ways.
The boys.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
When you're talking about 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, right? In that time frame, the boys, our black boys, and I bet you that if you look at the numbers, there are probably a lot of black boys who have been sexually violated and abused. But we're just not we're not having enough of those conversations. But a lot of black men, we carry that, you know what I mean? From into manhood, we carry that. And we don't talk about it. We don't go to therapy for it. So black boys go through this horrific, traumatizing experience, then grow up to be black men, and it starts to play out in their behavior, their relationships, the whole nine. So we got to protect the boys as well.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we're having enough, if we're doing all that we can to protect those little boys, because we think, oh, it's a boy, it's not going to happen. But
no, it's
I'm coming across black men who who are saying it.
Yeah,
this happened to me.
Yeah, forgive me if I'm misquoting. I think it was W.E.B. Du Bois that talked about it being easier to fix a child than to repair a broken man. And I think what we're talking about is how much of an effect this can have long-term on human beings. That's why we want to do our best, or should want to do our best, to protect the innocence of children so that we are not creating, broken adults, or better said, adults with brokenness, right? When we see people making decisions in their adult lives, you don't have the luxury of going back and saying, what happened to you, but we know the impact of those formative years. It's super important to what a person thinks like, acts like, believes about themselves, their self-worth, how they value others, how they, respect or lack of thereof for their fellow human being. A lot of it happens in our formative years. So anything that we can do, especially when it comes to child sex abuse, to prevent it from happening, to tighten the laws around it. And again, calling out and holding those accountable who violate or possibly give an indication that they are doing something that is not moral when it comes to children. We have to call it out and we have to hold them accountable.
Yeah, and I think that's the other part about this, that the unfortunate part is I'm not sure if that accountability exists within the Black community enough. When we're not going to go deep into this part of the discussion, but when we talked about R. Kelly, look at the division that came up just in that conversation about his behavior, right? And so I always question, like, if we see this level of violation, and we know it exists in the Black community, we know that there's somebody in the family who has either been violated or who is the perpetrator of this type of act. Do we call them out? Do we put them on blast? Do we communicate them from the family gatherings and the family, you know? Do we have a discussion about that? We say, oh, that's Uncle so-and-so. Yeah, y'all know how he gets. Y'all know how Uncle so-and-so. Well, that's Aunt so-and-so. Y'all know how she gets. But we're not isolating that
really
person.
strong.
Yeah, there's no strong rebuke against that person. Because I get it, it's family. I get that part. So you don't want to seem, but if you have a family member that even with the suspicion of being a person that violates children, why don't we have those conversations? Why is it so hard for us to separate that person from the family, to isolate that person, to call the authorities on that person? You know what I mean, Suzanne?
We have a cloak of secrecy. We have a cloak of protecting our so-called loved ones. Oprah talks about that when she was going through, family dinners and stuff with the man who had violated her, sitting around a Thanksgiving table, everybody saying prayers like, this is normal. Of course, we're not, monolithic. We have different people with different experiences, but this is a real pervasive experience for many across socioeconomic classes, across racial boundaries. So there's something that is not happening, or that's not, transferring when it comes to accountability. I agree with you. We'll say it, but when it comes to even our own families, oftentimes we do turn a blind eye. And again, there's so many sad stories out there now in reality TV, and people who have done kind of, these interviews about their families. I think about the Pace sisters and some others who have come forward, and these are like super gospel groups, and all types of abuse was taking place there. And again, we do have functional Black families, but there's also the dysfunctional behavior that is causing many in our community to not be able to live their fullest lives. And we have to really be much more proactive, even with the people that we love, in making sure they do not have access to children and making sure they are held accountable. I agree with what you're saying.
Absolutely. Nation of Gamma Nation, you checked in and said, look, it's not so much we don't talk about it, Suzette. Nobody believes it, sadly. The men and women dynamic is too one-sided. Woo.
Or she fast, that little girl fast. That's what she deserved. That kind of.
She deserved that. There's a lot of victim blaming, right? So she couldn't. Okay, so what? So she puts herself out there. She quote unquote fast, but does that make her? Does she deserve to be abused?
She's still a child. If you're 12, if you're 13, if you're 14, okay, I'm talking about,
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? I know, I get your point. I definitely get your point. But I'm just saying, like, that's how the mentality is like, yeah, but she puts herself out there. She can put herself out there, okay. But if there's one violation, does she deserve to be violated? Yeah, you can't bring those two to think. Those two arguments aren't the same. You can't be like, oh yeah, so because she slept with a couple of guys, a few extra guys than you are comfortable with, she deserves to be raped or abused or violated? That's crazy. So Gamma Nation, I appreciate you saying that. Thank you so much. Karen Connor, my sister, you said my parents did allow us to spend the night at anyone's home other than did allow us to spend the night at anyone's home other than our grandparents. Trusted immediate family or friends, outsiders remained outside. I don't know if we're having those, as we wrap up on this, but having those sleepovers, like if my child is doing a sleepover, I gotta know who you are.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I don't mind the scrutiny. I don't mind if somebody spends the time with my child. I don't mind if their parents, if another child's parents say, hey, I just wanted to get to talk to you, get to know you guys, but please, by all means, ask me any questions. Ask Nira any. Like that's not a thing. But the sleepover thing, it's 2023. I'm so sorry.
We weren't allowed to sleep over. It was only at my cousin's houses. Nope.
I'm so sorry. And if it's family, I'm so sorry. That's to ask some questions.
That was it.
I'm asking some questions. So as we wrap up, look, our prayers and thoughts go to the family of this little boy. But I hope, as you said, Suzette, that there's at least if we're not talking about firing the Dalai Lama, there should be an investigation to make sure that there isn't a pattern of abuse. If this is a one-time thing,
that your mind even went there though is a problem. It's a problem.
But if it seems like you say, it's too quick, too fast, too comfortable. So there needs to be an investigation. Folks, we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, look, let's have a different part of the conversation about individualism and common good. Has our individualism as a culture, as a country, has superseded the common good? We want to have that discussion up next with you. Stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol,
we're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
We feel the hidden impacts of climate change that land harder in Black, brown, and Native communities.
Not many people talk about it because they clearly don't know our lives. But with President Biden's landmark infrastructure and climate plans, our issues are finally seen.
Removing lead pipes means we know our water is safe. Cutting carbon pollution helps our kids breathe easier. 1.5 million new jobs means stable work in communities. The impact we need
right now.
All right, folks, welcome back to the show for our final conversation. And we've been having some very, very good ones today, folks. So I appreciate all of you, my Culture Crew members, for checking in and being a part of the discussions. And if you're brand new to the space, welcome, welcome, welcome. I see that we actually had a number of people who have showed their financial support to the Bring the Funk fan club, have donated something to continue to support us here at the Black Star Network. So I truly, truly, on behalf of the culture here on BSN, we thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to tune in, and most importantly, to share just a little bit of what you earned and sharing that with us and giving something to the cause. So we truly, truly appreciate it. And it means a lot to us that you feel like these conversations are worth your investment. So again, thank you, thank you, thank you. For our final conversation, I wanted to have a discussion about where we are. You know, I've been talking about character, voter values, but there seems to be something happening in our country more and more that shows that this country is not just falling apart because of political parties. This country is also falling apart because of the culture of individualism that we find ourselves in. And there was a Time magazine piece that was written by a Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut, and a lecturer at the Harvard Graduate School of Education and the Kennedy School of Government, Mr. Richard Weisberg, about individualism, putting individualism, they say we have put individualism ahead of the common good for too long. And as we talk about what is going to be the future of this country, what will the future of America look like, we do have to look at the culture of individualism, this idea that it's all about me and not about the we. I want to bring my sister Suzette Speaks back into the discussion on this, because Suzette, these two gentlemen put out this piece about individualism, and it has caused me to ask the question, has individualism superseded the common good in this country? Have we just forsaken this idea that we are a country, that we are existing among other people? And at this point, just say, forget about that. I'm about to get in mine and then moving on. I want to share this thing and I want to get your take on this very quickly, Suzette. First and foremost, folks, let me just share with you what these two gentlemen had to say in their piece. First quote that comes from them. It says, in America today, far too many of us are disconnected from each other, lonely, self-protective, or at each other's throats. Sacrifice for the common good feels anachronistic. Everything not nailed down has been commoditized or turned into a source of personal enrichment. The daily shout shows and nonstop social media hostility push us into corners and reward balkanization, sacrificing personal gain for the common good, or treating people with different views respectfully, or prioritizing collective success over individual success. It's all for the suckers. Do you agree with this assertion, Suzette? Are we at this point in this country right now?
Farajii, I know we have about 15 more minutes, so yes, I think as deep as we go get into this conversation, there has definitely been kind of a cultural pattern that is very American, that we have accepted across ethnic groups, et cetera, or maybe some more than others. Let me refine that, where it seems as if personal achievement, personal wealth, and being able to, stand on top of your castle, whatever that is, your degrees, where you live, what you drive, what you wear, has seemed to supersede a need for elevation of the collective. What I mean by that is, as this article pointed out, there are so many times it seems as if the needs of the community is often overlooked or not even a priority for particularly our young people. But when you ask our young people where they get that from, they say they get it from their parents. But there has been, ever since the inception of our country, and I agree with the article, that this rugged individualism has taken us from what I think, especially within our culture, the village of understanding, that no one gets anywhere by themselves, that people need each other, that there is a benefit to, group political will and economics and other parts that, sometimes we see ourselves as going it alone in. So I do think this has had a big disadvantage, as the article points out, people's mental health, people's economics, and just overall loneliness has increased so much so because we're not as engaged in communal activities, whether it's religious organizations, whether it's social clubs, whether it's our kids having interaction with just the neighborhood. Oftentimes, I tell people in Florida, most of us, unless you go to a certain church or are proactive about learning who lives next to you, you don't know your neighbors. You're almost afraid to let them in your house or to let them know your name, or if you didn't grow up with them, you don't really talk to them. We are very cliquish, I know, here, and that could be representative of, a bigger city or metropolitan area where there's a lot of transients, etc. But nonetheless, I think even beyond that, there are many incentives in today's culture or messages that are being kind of sent to people to do it for yourself, by yourself. No one else matters. You and maybe your little family unit and a little bit of an extension around you is who you should care about. And I think is doing us in our community and our country a big disservice.
A huge disservice. So much so that it's actually, I think, to your point, Suzette, it has kept this country from moving forward because we don't see ourselves as being a part of something. It's interesting because the culture says that, for example, it speaks about this in the op-ed, that social media was originally intended to bring people together, but it has made us even more isolated.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like we have to, I think a lot of this is that we may have lost what it means to be a part of a community, have to be taught those skills of bridging, building relationships, getting to know people, Whether you're talking about where you actually live, the places that you work, the places that you worship at, like building community. What does that mean? And more importantly, is that a value for you and your family? Is that a value that you instill in your children and the next generation? Because here's the second part of that. And Kim, let's put a quote too. It says this, and this came from the piece, that in 1985, Habits of the Heart, which was an extensive study of values in American life, reported that Americans speak a first language of personal ambitions and only a second language of commitment to others and the collective. We only care about ourselves at this point. And then once we get ourselves together, then we start to move forward to, all right, let me think about somebody else. But suppose it takes you 40, 50, 60 years to get yourself together. So you negate other people during that time and you put your own ambitions first and not think about being a part of a community. It's no surprise to that we see older folks in the church, older folks at the community association meetings, because for a lot of young people, personal ambition reigns more supreme. I gotta get mine, and then I'll think about the rest of y'all. But not understanding that if we're not seeing ourselves as part of a community from a very early age, it's going to be harder. It's going to be harder, and it's more detrimental to the larger scope of things, especially within the Black community. You can't just diss the Black community and be like, I'm not going to be engaged in helping to build it up. I'm not going to be engaged to try to make the quality of life for people's lives better, my neighbors better. Whatever I do affects me. I don't care about how it affects you. And then when you get older, if you're in a neighborhood, you're gonna run up against that same type of mentality from the young people that you find yourself around when you get older. When you move into a new neighborhood, you trying to settle down. Them young people ain't gonna give a damn about you.
Yeah. The thing is, at every stage of life, there comes a time where you need help. So it's really kind of deceiving when you're young, when you're strong, or if God blessed you, where you don't have, physical, I want to say disabilities or challenges, and you have, as much money as you need, et cetera, life can happen. And I think, with the United States not having the social safety net that a lot of other first world countries do have, we have this very real fear of, falling through the cracks or not being able to do it ourselves. I think a lot of times when I look at, why immigrant communities have been able to survive, it's the collective where, you see people come in, live in one house with, several adult family members and try to, save money and put together towards bills, et cetera, until one person can move out, the next person can move out, then you can buy a car, then you can buy a business. You see that model and it works. But I don't really believe in a conspiracy. But who wins when we're all isolating ourselves or don't see ourselves as a part of a whole in this country? Like what we're experiencing now with, people getting different news sources. So the facts as we think of them, Farajii, is not what every other American thinks are facts. When I speak to certain people, and I'm really kind of shocked that, the news sources that they listen to or things that they're getting and that they're believing is so different. I understand why, people can get just wrapped up in their own little small world. But, for us to survive economically as a country, for us to survive politically as a country, we still need, the common thread that used to hold us together, which was for many, the Constitution, for others, the general ethos of, this being the land of the free, where anything is possible, where, it's where you can, become anything you want, et cetera, et cetera. But that's not really the reality. Majority of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. Majority of Americans don't have, adequate, housing or healthcare, et cetera, et cetera. When we look at, what's going on in our communities, if we moved in a communal way, oftentimes these things would become, addressed, whether it be on the, private or religious organization side or, nonprofit side, volunteer side. We would solve some of those problems ourselves, or if need be on the governmental side. But again, without that desire to, or that ability to see yourself as a part of a whole, even with Blackness, there was a very clear community for, I would say, well into the 70s. And there is still a community, of course, of people that see themselves as having common interests, common goals, and a need to defend, freedoms that have been infringed upon and regain ground that has been taken away. But you have people that are kind of siphoning off. Of course, if I get my little house on the hill, even here, we can't get certain people to run for, say, judge or other political offices because they moved out west, got that big house, and they chilling. Now, everybody's not called to public service. I get it. But I just think of it sometimes as like, how much more progress could we be making if people saw themselves as a part of that whole? God has been good to me. And now what can I do to help uplift others who they also can go forward and bless somebody or bring somebody out or change somebody's mentality, et cetera, et cetera.
Absolutely. Let me just add to that. Even if you don't have all of yourself together, it doesn't stop you from helping somebody else to get on that journey, right? True. Because sometimes just helping somebody else will help you to get yourself together.
Absolutely.
Because I know some people say, let me work on myself. Let me work on myself. And I get that. But that doesn't mean that you have to negate your existence among the community while you, quote unquote, work on yourself. You can't work on yourself by yourself. Mm-hmm. Everything can't be done just within your own self, because look, you still wake up, God bless you to walk outside, to see somebody. You can't have tunnel vision when you got all this stuff happening around you, especially within the Black community, where so many of those challenges hit us right in the face as soon as we get up in the morning. So, the thing that we're called to do, the great responsibility that was placed on us, is that even while you're working on yourself, be a blessing to somebody else.
And Farajii, you would be surprised, not you, but people would be surprised how much people are willing to help you if you ask. People are so afraid to be. And
that's how you build communities,
exactly. And we stay isolated. The amount of people I see and I talk to, they're actually really lonely. There's not just in the Black community, but across the American culture, right. It is really, really staggering. So to put oneself out there, to join a group, to become involved, what we say civically, in a community-based organization will absolutely change your life, whatever type it is. We definitely need to kind of push this, especially to the next generation.
Absolutely. Suzette, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. I love Wednesdays.
Yay!
All right,
Thank you
folks,
for having me.
Make sure y'all support my sister Suzette Speaks. Go to her YouTube station, her YouTube channel.
Yes.
Watch her shows, fantastic shows she's doing. She puts out content all the time, dynamic content, talks about a lot of different things. And so make sure y'all check her out, Suzette Speaks, on YouTube, or follow her on social media. Y'all have embraced my sister, and she is part of the online culture crew. She always gives us a shout out and show her due love and respect. So thank you, Suzette, for being so good for the culture, and we'll continue to support you, sis. God willing, we'll reconnect with you next week.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Always a pleasure. See you guys soon.
All right, folks, that's going to do it for me. I want to thank each one of you, my online culture crew. Y'all are dynamic. Thank you so much for having these conversations with us. Make sure you go to our website at blackstarnetwork.com. Do your due diligence and support us financially. Share the content and follow us on social media at Black Star Network. Your support means everything to us, folks. So if you support us today, we will make sure we continue to bring you these discussions, the shows, the platforms, keep you up to date from today, tomorrow, the day after, the day after, the day after. But you're not going to have these type of discussions nowhere else about what's going on in Black America and beyond, other than right here on Black Star Network. So go to blackstarnetwork.com. Also follow me, yours truly, on all social media platforms at The Real Farajii on Instagram and Farajii on Twitter. All right, that's going to do it for us. Stay tuned. Up next is RMU. As always, never be afraid to challenge what's wrong. Stand for what's right while being yourself in the process. And God willing, we will talk to you tomorrow for another exciting edition of The Culture, right here on the Black Star Network. Have a great afternoon and a wonderful evening. Talk to you soon. Peace.